Story begin almost 7 years ago. A catastrophe struck the world. Everyone was caught ignorant. Intimidating disaster called the dungeon break past, where horrifying brutes passed through doors that appeared out of thin air. Because of this incident, numerous people failed and suffered out of luck as the bad days went by. His parents also passed away that day. He cried gashes of blood and pledged to become a huntsman and rip piecemeal the monsters in the world. Same year, literally in the catastrophe memorial park, he was sitting on a bench while before was a mama talking to her child. He was dissatisfied after being demurred out of the huntsman training center. His name was Han Sunjeon. His eyes were breathless as he flashed back his time in the training center. The director informed him not to come to the training center. Presently, Sung-yoon couldn't believe what he'd heard and asked the reason behind his redundancy. The instruction also explains that those who have awakened got a many months to complete their training in the exclusive training hall. Still, Sun-yoon had formerly exceeded that period. Same year, she had formerly passed. Sung-yeon goggled at the director as he continued to hear. The director let out his honest words describing Sanjun's gift as trash and farther staying would make the training center's character scrap. Sun-yoon was speechless and in unbelief. This time the associates behind him started their trash talk, calling Sun-yeon stupid for not knowing his place. He was patient, but unfortunately one status would not increase. Indeed, after training for 7 times,
thing would make the training center's reputation garbage. Sun-yoon was speechless and in disbelief. This time, the colleagues behind him started their trash talk, calling Sun-yoon stupid for not knowing his place. He was persistent, but unfortunately, one's status would not increase even after training for 7 years. Back to the present, Sung-yoon clenched the drink in hand until it burst out. Besides unlocking unique traits and acquiring skills, Sung-yoon's stats did not increase. Sung-yoon started asking himself why his father passed away. Behind him, a little girl raised her fist, shouting how she remembered how her father died. She proudly told the story about the time when the monsters came as his father saved the people until the end. The girl's mother agreed. She further questioned what they should do if they go through tough times later in life, to which the girl answered, she would be strong and won't give up. Hearing the child's positive words, Sunjeon's face brightened up and his eyes gained another life. The mother was proud and brought her daughter into her arms and embraced her warmly. It was then they noticed a sudden movement from their side as they both turned to look. They saw Sung-yoon bowing toward them, so they asked who he was. After the brief bow, Sung-yoon dashed away, leaving the mother and her daughter in confusion. Sung-yoon now remembered how he endured for the past 7 years. His face was painted with determination. He knew he could not stop in his tracks. Sung-yoon would not give up. Later that day, the rain fell heavily. We see Sung-yoon knocking on the door. He was wet. A while later, the door opened and the light shone through from within. The director's face appeared, calmly asking Sung-yoon to go back. However, Sung-yoon continued to plead. He asked for help to take the hunter exam once more, and he could not give up like this. Faced with Sunjeon's unyielding spirit, the director could only sigh in frustration. He gritted his teeth in anger. The bastard Sung-yoon could not freaking get it. Sung-yoon was stunned. His face looked like he had bumped against the wall. The director pointed at Sung-yoon and continued to shout as he asked if the bastard came for a refund for the membership fees, to which Sung-yoon denied. Sung-yoon retorted it was not because of the money. However, the director did not believe him and directly punched Sung-yoon in the face, sending him away. Sung-yoon fell heavily and crashed into the piles of garbage on the street. The director's irritated face continued asking Sung-yoon, what else did he mean by coming? While Sung-yoon sat there silently, he heard the director's words, you failure of a bastard. Sung-yoon lay unmoving on the ground as the downpour of rain drenched him. If he only had a unique trait. If only he had a little talent. Then, the Tower of Trials is praising you for your iron will. A notification appeared out of nowhere. Praise, who was that? Sung-yoon instinctively asked in shock. Immediately, the pool of water on the ground beneath him transformed. It deepened as if it had become a lake. Sung-yoon was shocked as he continued falling down. In the neighborhood, only his plea for help along with the gushes of rain had remained. This time, the director opened the door and was thoroughly angered. He wanted to scold Sung-yoon, but to his surprise, the bastard was nowhere to be seen. The director continued to look left and right, unconvinced as he wondered where Sung-yoon disappeared to. Unfortunately, the sound of rain falling on the garbage bins was all he could hear. Meanwhile, Sung-yoon continued to plunge deep into the water. He screamed at the top of his lungs. It was useless, and now, he was out of breath. Luckily, with a splash, he was out of the water and continued to fall down. Sung-yoon stabilized himself, seeing the notification again. The Tower of Trial had selected all suitable candidates from Earth. He wondered if a second catastrophe occurred. Please select difficulty. The rewards you will get will be proportional to the chosen difficulty. A notification appeared again. Sung-yoon had no idea what was happening. However, the choices of difficulty were already presented to him. In the end, Sung-yoon followed his instincts and seized the chance as he continued to press on. Sung-yoon felt his body getting pulled forcefully. He was warping out of space. A notification rang again. Sung-yoon would enter the first floor of the Tower of Trial, and it hoped he would obtain satisfactory results at the end of the sufferings. In just a blink of an eye, Sung-yoon appeared in a new place. He was in a desert where the rays of the sun produced scorching heat. A weapon will be provided, and a notification suddenly rang. After a moment, a long sword stuck in the ground appeared in front of Sung-yoon. Following this, a notification rang again. The subject of the trial is survival and the reward would be a unique trait. This time, Sung-yoon's eyes widened in surprise, and the words unique trait finally caught his attention. Sung-yoon then remembered the past. He worked so hard over the past 7 years. However, at this moment, he would have a unique trait as a reward. This is insane, Sung-yoon screamed crazily. First, Sung-yoon walked over to the sword. He needed it to fend for himself. Just as he was walking, the sand under his feet started to rumble, and he nearly lost his footing. Sung-yoon immediately ran out of the way as the sand continued to grow as if a mountain was emerging from it. The tutorial would begin. A notification rang as Sung-yoon looked at his back and the dumbfounded look on his face turned into fear. Tower of Trial chosen difficulty, hard. The notification continued and proclaimed, a sand golem has appeared. This is crazy, Sung-yoon exclaimed as he stared at the humongous being in front of him. Then, please survive against the sand golem for 10 minutes. As he received the information, Sung-yoon started to run as a huge foot followed on his back. Damn it, Sung-yoon nearly fell after he started to run when a notification appeared. Sung-yoon was stupefied, breaking into cold sweat as he saw the consequences of failing the trial. The penalty would be death. Sung-yoon screamed pitifully as he ran for his life. He wondered if he could escape just by running away. Although the sand golem looked slow, it was actually faster because of its size. Also, he was running on top of the desert. Sung-yoon knew it was impossible for him to run for 9 minutes with his stamina. Then, Sung-yoon remembered the sword he got. He thought he discovered what he was supposed to do. It was either he died trying to run away or he fought to the death. However, Sung-yoon continued running as he screamed in despair. Damn it, how he was supposed to win, Sung-yoon cursed despite being out of breath. This time, his memories brought back the insults he suffered in the past. Damn it, Sung-yoon cursed again. He could not accept his fate. As he continued to run for his life, Sung-yoon felt the sand golem's mockery towards him as though it turned into a titan and teasingly said, Sung-yoon was nothing in this world. Sung-yoon clenched his teeth. Would he die a pathetic death just by trying to run away? No, Sung-yoon found the answer. He changed his path and ran away to the side. He had 7 years of trying to be a hunter. He was confident and knowledgeable compared to the hunters on the field. At the very least, there's no answer if he kept running away. He needed to find a new way to survive. Monsters like golems would stop moving if he could destroy their core. However, their cores are usually in places Sung-yoon could hardly reach. In spite of this, Sung-yoon continued to run. He was heading for the summit ahead. The sand golem was lured, and with this plan, Sung-yoon could make the sand golem's core easier to reach. While in the air, Sung-yoon thrust his blade on the sand to hold himself in place. After they fell, Sung-yoon's momentum continued as he slid while his blade left a long gush. Sung-yoon found his ground while the sand golem fell down on the foot of the mountain. The sand golem tried to upright itself. Unfortunately, Sung-yoon would not give it a chance. He jumped into the air. He was able to reach it as he landed near the sand golem's core. Sung-yoon hastily stood on his feet. There, he finally swung his sword towards the core. However, it was hard and the blade rebounded as sparks glistened after the strike. Sung-yoon raised his blade, ready to slash again. On the sand golem's core, he could already see some cracks. The sand golem fought back as it raised its head. Sung-yoon lost his balance. The core was harder than he thought. Damn it, Sung-yoon could already perceive his victory. If he could just hit the core one more time, Sung-yoon was prepared to strike when a huge silhouette of the sand golem's hand appeared on his side. Caught unprepared, Sung-yoon was easily grabbed. He was squeezed and blood flew out from his mouth. He knew it. Sung-yoon still failed at the very end. You are nothing. Sung-yoon could imagine the mockery in the sand golem's eyes. He was again reminded of the insults he had received. However, Sung Yoon continued to grip his sword tightly. "Stop it!" Sung Yoon erupted in fury as his eyes glinted with ferocity. "Shut up, you golem!" Sung Yoon shouted and threw his sword with all his might. It hit the mark and the golem's core started to crack. With that, the sand golem roared in defeat. A notification then appeared. Sung Yoon had destroyed the core of the sand golem, completing the tutorial trial. The sand golem started to disintegrate as the debris of its core began to fall. The calmness of the desert resurfaced again. This time, Sung Yoon emerged from the sand, wondering if he really did what he had done. Him killing a golem, Sung Yoon was shaken as he thought about how and why he could. Sung Yoon then smiled. Even though he could, he barely won against it. As blood drenched his body, Sung Yoon stood and proclaimed he survived, hearing a notification for clearing the first floor of the Tower of Trials. As the clear reward, Sung Yoon earned unlock unique traits and obtained 1,000 points. Additionally, he got the skill, Fast Recovery Plus, and 500 points. Reading the rewards, Sung Yoon could not believe it. He was emotional as he put in a lot of effort for the past 7 years only to receive scorn and mockery. Soon, Sung Yoon finally received his unique trait, necromancy. Now, Sung Yoon could become a hunter. However, all of this could only happen after he survived. This time, something caught Sung Yoon's attention. An unknown object materialized in the air. A black fog appeared where the sand golem died. Sung Yoon reached for the fog with his finger and a notification appeared, asking if he would like to absorb the sand golem's spirit. Sung Yoon pondered what was the meaning of spirit, absorb, and if the black fog is his unique trait. In the end, Sung Yoon gave his confirmation and the black fog suddenly approached him. Sung Yoon's eyes widened as the fog surged all over his body. This time, a notification appeared. He had absorbed the spirit of the sand golem, and his proficiency had increased by 7%. Sung Yoon looked at the last bit of fog. He was alarmed as he felt something enter his body. Finally, after all the fog was absorbed, a notification appeared. He now had 1 out of 5 spirits. Sung Yoon could feel the spirit within his body. He closed his eyes and tried to find out how to use it. A notification then appeared. His strength increased by 3 while his health increased by 2, and he could permanently increase his stats by the spirits he had obtained. Sung Yoon was amazed. He could feel it, the energy filling up his body, and his stats had gone up. In the past, no matter how he trained, he could not increase his stats, but now, he could permanently increase them. Sung Yoon checked his stats, seeing his unique trait and their effects. He was glad. If he returned with the skill, he could become a hunter. Soon, a portal appeared in front of Sung Yoon. He silently stared at it. In the end, Sung Yoon took a step forward. He had no choice but to go. The portal was activated. Sung Yoon was sent inside a room, but he immediately collapsed. Damn it, his injuries are worse than he had thought. Fortunately, soon after he struggled to lift his body, Sung Yoon was surrounded by a magical energy. All of his injuries were gone, and now he could steadily stand his ground. As Sung Yoon continued to walk forward, he wondered if his body healed when the trial was over, but soon after, a bed was brought over to his notice. Forget it, he was tired. Sung Yoon immediately got into bed. What he was supposed to do now? Could he really escape the tower? Sung Yoon was confused about why the tower called him. Soon after, a notification appeared. Sung Yoon could use 5 commands, which were info, store, community, inventory, and trial. He got up from his bed as he further read, saying the command word will activate the commands. Sung Yoon clapped his face. He needed to focus on surviving for now. He said the command word trial, and a notification appeared. 23 hours and 21 minutes remained for the second floor trial. Sung Yoon could not select the trial yet. Next, he used the command word community, and a list of people's chats appeared. Sung Yoon saw how confused everyone was in the chat, like the people who got dragged for the trials despite not being a hunter. Suddenly, an admin named XXX entered, disabling the chat. Sung Yoon was surprised at the unexpected appearance. Admin XXX chatted. They had important information for those who passed the tutorial trial. On the bed, Sung Yoon still grumbled about how he did not know how to return, but he still focused on memorizing the important information. Admin XXX messages appeared. They would teach how to use the points earned during the tutorial trial as currency, and the possibility of giving or receiving points from others in the community. Sung Yoon continued to read. Within the Tower of Trials, one cannot even get a single water without points, which could only be earned through trials. In other words, he needed to do everything to get used to the rules within the tower, and kept entering and clearing trials to earn points and live. That is all to share. Admin XXX disappeared after leaving the message, unblocking everyone's prohibition to chat. This time, Sung-yoon was disappointed. He thought he could be a hunter if he could just return. He suddenly looked at the sword in the corner. He could not do much with only a piece of long metal. Store. Sung-yoon used the command word and purchased a good old shield. All the hunters lost their stats when they entered the tower, so he practiced his move. Sung-yoon brought his sword forward as he shielded his body. He proceeded with foot movements. Sung-yoon knew it would be easier to learn skills that everyone had learned before. Sung-yoon continued to practice until sweat dripped from his face. Everyone started the same, and if he did not train, there was no way that he could catch up to them. In the end, Sung-yoon let go of his sword and shield as he tiredly lay down on the floor. Soon after, magical energy engulfed Sung-yoon, draining his sweat and fatigue away. His condition was perfect again. Thanks to the healing effect of the waiting room, he could train easily. Sung-yoon sighed. He should be able to train for the next trial. Inventory. Sung-yoon used the command word as he thought about what he should do about his hunger. A bunch of items appeared. Sung-yoon was shocked as he realized he only had 40 points after buying some stuff. If he did not get the additional rewards, he would not have gotten his shield. Time went by, and only 17 minutes remained for the next trial. Even the chat was quiet now. At this moment, Sung-yoon wondered if he could manage to survive again. With a determined face, Sung-yoon confirmed to himself he would survive. The timer started its countdown. After which, a confirmation appeared. Sung-yoon accepted the challenge, passing through a portal toward a forest. A notification appeared. He had entered the second floor of the Tower of Trials with hard difficulty. Sung-yoon was surprised. This time, the subject of his trial is assassination. The notification appeared. He had to assassinate the orc tribe leader within the time limit. The orc leader would be his target, Sung-yoon confirmed as he approached the edge of the cliff. Down below he discovered a village. What Sung-yoon saw was the orc tribe. Within the village, a swarm of orcs gathered. This time, Sung-yoon was tasked to defeat their leader. The village was not big. However, strong orcs stood guard around it. Nearby, Sung-yoon approached silently as he hid behind the bushes. Normally, if there was a guard amongst the orc tribe, there was also a hunter, and Sung-yoon knew this. He believed it was already difficult to win against an orc hunter. However, the problem is there were a lot of them. In order to defeat them, a party of E-rank hunters was needed to make sure no one would die. Helpless, Sung-yoon could only ponder on what he should do. As he crawled on the ground, Sung-yoon thought of retreating. He would come back later with a plan. Sung-yoon smiled. There was a way to complete the trial. In the forest, dried wood was lighted with fire. Sung-yoon sat on the ground. There was a couple of firewood around him, while he stared at the display as he held the lighted wood in his hands. Now then, Sung-yoon moved his hand. He stuffed the firewood directly into the display. After which, the firewood was placed on his inventory. Sung-yoon's smile widened as his experiment succeeded. In the forest nearby, a flock of birds flew after sudden movements. A group of diligent orcs could be seen walking with their weapons. Sung-yoon continued to observe as he hid behind a tree. The group of orc hunters was already gone and would be back at sunset. He had plenty of time. The way to complete his trial was with fire, Sung-yoon thought, bursting with confidence. Meanwhile, a couple of guards could be seen at the entrance of the orc village. Sung-yoon hid in a tree as he observed. The orc guards would not stand guard all the time and they would return to the village to eat or take a break. His chance had come. Sung-yoon began to move as he threw a lighted fire. Sung-yoon was fast. Another lighted firewood was thrown again. The forest easily caught fire and blazed within the blink of an eye. The orc villagers started to run around with their buckets as they fought the fire. Thick smoke rose into the sky. If Sung-yoon closed off the village with fire, he would not worry about the orc hunters coming back from the hunt. One by one, the orcs cooperated and brought buckets of water. However, Sung-yoon needed to kill them. The orc continued on with their work, taking water from the lake, unaware of Sung-yoon's plan. The orc started to gather a bucket of water when Sung-yoon appeared on its back. This time, the orc turned his head as he noticed something. However, he was immediately pierced by Sung-yoon's sword and he could only growl before his death. A black fog appeared on the orc's dead body. Sung-yoon's unique trait, Necromancer F, has been activated. Sung-yoon was notified about the orc spirit which he happily absorbed. The spirit disappeared into his body. His proficiency had risen to 9%. However, Sungyun's happiness was cut short when he noticed a huge orc on his side. Sungyun was caught off guard when he encountered a guard. The orc guard swung its sword heavily as Sungyun raised his shield to block the terrifying blow. Absorb, Sungyun commanded and used the orc's spirit to permanently increase his stats. A magical energy surged around Sungyun. His strength increased by 4 and his agility increased by 2. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and Sungyun counterattacked. Now, the forest was completely engulfed in flames. Without any difficulties, Sungyun defeated the guard and absorbed its spirit, and his fast recovery skill has been revitalized. Sungyun's stats increased again, and the guard's spirit also helped in improving his stamina. The sky looked gloomy. Sungyun's silhouette could be seen walking out of the blazing forest. A group of orcs easily noticed his presence. They were already prepared to battle. Sungyun's eyes scanned his enemies. There were a total of 5, 3 workers, 1 guard, and the old clan head. If Sungyun was careful, he would have had no problem defeating them. This time, a series of orc words came out of the clan head's mouth. It was the signal for the battle. However, after Sungyun absorbed the orc guard's spirit, the orc workers could not threaten him at all. They were defeated with only 1 blow. This time, Sungyun's attention was caught by another orc. An orc guard sneakily appeared behind the defeated orc work, swinging its axe at Sungyun. Fortunately, Sungyun had raised his shield in time to defend himself. However, the attack broke the bones in his arm and made Sungyun grunt in pain. Amidst the fire, the orc's clad head was left alone as if the guard gave up on guarding it. This means the guard was the last obstacle. Sungyun charged forward as he evaded another attack. His eyes glinted as he thrust his sword. The guard threw a mouthful of blood as Sungyun's sword pierced through its body. However, all this time, the orc's clan head was preparing a surprise and it escaped Sungyun's notice. Defeating the guard, Sungyun was already prepared to take the clan head's life. Unfortunately, the clan head was ahead of him. Sungyun was stunned at the sudden development. A beam of fire burst forth from the clan head's staff. Sungyun could only grit his teeth as he received the attack with his wooden shield. The orc's clan head smiled with satisfaction upon seeing its masterpiece. Unfortunately for it, Sungyun was stronger than he was before and he emerged from the smoke, still alive. This time, the orc's clan head was in disbelief. How could Sungyun defend himself against fire with only a wooden shield? The achievement, the one who endures fire, has been achieved, and the skill, Fire Resistant F, has been created. Sungyun heard the notification as he stood in place with his face bloodied and clothes turned to shreds. You are dead. Sungyun was greatly annoyed, saying the words through gritted teeth. Sungyun and the orc's clan head stood face to face. Seeing Sungyun's advance, the clan head fastly reacted and started to attack once again. However, Sungyun was faster. 2 decapitated hands holding a staff flew into the air. The orc's clan head could not struggle against Sungyun's speed. Face filled with sweat, the orc's clan head roared in despair. He was now without his hand. The orc pitifully let out a sound of fear. Without hesitation, the orc's clan head turned his back and decided to run toward his camp. Sungyun was further annoyed by the clan head's action. Step by step, he proceeded toward the clan head's camp. Sungyun then slashed his sword, tearing away the obstruction in his eyes. Soon after, he saw something out of his expectations. Sungyun discovered 2 young orcs, fearfully clinging to the clan head's embrace. One of the young orcs approached. It grabbed Sungyun's knee. Seeing the young orc's tear-filled eyes, Sungyun wondered if the orcs also valued family. He stood there motionless. His memories brought the past. His parents could only let him survive in exchange for their lives. At this moment, the young orc grabbed a weapon on its back. In the blink of an eye, the pitiful young orc turned violent. Seriously, how stupid, Sungyun muttered as he angrily used the sword's handle and brutally smacked the young orc's head. Useless, the young orc's sneak attack caused its death. This time, the clan head and the remaining young orc attacked with full force. In the end, their desperate struggle was cut down. Sungyun would destroy the monster's bloodlines even if he became a ghost. Congratulations, you have completed the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials. Sungyun received a notification. Later, Sungyun was sent back to the waiting room where he checked the battered shield that saved his life. He could not use it anymore. This time it was close, Sungyun muttered as he looked into the community. He discovered that half of them died. This time, something caught Sungyun's attention. It was a chat of someone who found the way to return to Earth. There was a way to return to Earth. Sun Yun was pleasantly surprised. Information. Sun Yun used the command word and found out he could get a question voucher every time he entered a new floor. Sun Yun used his voucher and immediately found his answer. There was a temporary stone for sale that could be used to return to Earth for a few days after he completed the 5th floor. Beyond the 7th floor, an extensive system expansion would occur and items that can make him permanently return to Earth would be sold. If he returned to Earth, Sun Yun believed he could become an A-rank hunter. Soon, he proceeded to check his stats. Looking at his ability, Sun Yun grabbed his head in frustration. If he was on Earth, he would be overpowered. Sun Yun calmed down. He just barely completed the 2nd floor. The 8th floor was still far away, but he needed to be positive. His stats had already progressed tremendously. Sun Yun took off his burned clothing. He got 5 spirits to absorb after the battle. After a while, Sun Yun fully absorbed the spirits, and his stats increased again. He was overflowing with strength. Sun Yun started to run around the room. This was beyond the realms of humans. Sun Yun happily ran until he was running into the ceiling. However, he could not hold on for long and dropped to the floor. Unfortunately, he was greeted by the face of the wall. Sun Yun crashed heavily. After the impact, Sun Yun lay on the floor as his silhouette remained on the wall. Because of the unexpected growth, he could not control his strength. Shop. Sun Yun used the command word and purchased the big dead tree shield worth 2,100 points. Inventory. Sun Yun used the command word and checked his rewards from the previous trials. A black steel dagger, and an assassin's cape. This time, Sun Yun finally looked awesome as he used the new gears. He needed to get used to all his items before the next trial. Sun Yun then started another round of training, running with his shield and brandishing his sword. Soon, he would become so strong that no one could approach him. Later, in a cold cave, Sun Yun came out of the portal. He had entered the 3rd floor of the Tower of Trials, difficulty hard. This time, the subject of the trial was a duel. Sun Yun raised his head and surveyed his surroundings. Soon, a notification appeared, and the Guardian of Darkness would enter. Sun Yun got into a fighting stance to receive his enemy, which could come from any direction. The countdown timer finished, but Sun Yun only felt silence. Then, in the blink of an eye, Sun Yun was stunned. Despite being prepared, he was easily struck by the sudden attack from his back. The attacker smiled playfully after making the first hit. Sun Yun grunted in pain. As another notification appeared again, he needed to defeat Doppelganger, the Guardian of Darkness.